Jared from Strong Roots Farm. Today we're going to talk pasture cover cropping. It's coming up after this.
I'm Jared McGinnis. Live in Southern Ohio with my awesome wife Jenny. We have 4 sons, Colt, Gideon, Ruger, and Gatlin. This is a story of how we sold our new home in the suburbs, purchased an old, unserviceable farm, and began to transform it into a local food source for us and our local community. We're on a mission of faith, family, and healthy food. Please subscribe and come with us on this journey. We are Strong Roots Farm.
All right, pasture cover cropping. So you've heard of cover crops, I'm sure. It's a new thing. Green manure, a lot of times it's called, where people will take after a cash crop, so corn, soybeans, wheat, whatever they've got. Out west there's lots of other crops, but they will cover crop with a annual grass, some sort of rye, forage winter wheat, something to that nature. And then they will come back and spray it and kill it, and then till it, and then they will plant their cash crop back into it. So that's the standard that I'm seeing around here. It's not nationwide, but that is a cover crop. That is a method for doing cover cropping. I've also seen people who are doing cash crops take and do a monoculture grass or whatever they're going to do. So let's say rye again. And then they'll till with either, plant right into that, or they'll roller binder that and then till or plant right into that. So they won't necessarily kill the grass, but they'll break it over, and since it's an annual, it will die long enough that the cash crop can come up through it and then kill the ryegrass the rest of the way, which I think is a little better method than using the spray, because you don't have that money in your spray. But that's 2 methods of cover cropping that we're seeing right now in commercial ag, and we're going to take it into our pastures here now, but in a little different method and with a little different end result, hopefully. So let's go look at some of the things we have right now. We're out here in the pasture. This paddock, this was a line of paddocks that went along this fence line. I had them in the back. I brought the cows up through here. You can tell that they've grazed here, and over here has never been grazed. I got 1 cut of hay off of that this year. Remember, this is first year hay, so this field was just nothing but weeds and rubble and trash and everything when we bought this farm. So there was really no good hay, no good grass whatsoever on this place. Had I tried to bush hog it and bring grass back, I kind of thought it would have took longer, so I went ahead and plowed it under. I don't know that I would have made that same decision today, knowing what I know about growing hay and growing grass, but that's the decision I made. So that's what's happened. 1-year-old seeded hay. We've got 1 run of cattle through this pass, no grazing through this yet. Okay, so I'm leaving this for my winter grazing. What I want you to notice is you can definitely tell where the cows have come through because of the weed pressure. So I kind of did a test here as well for farmers and for myself as well. At the other end of the field, after they went through the paddocks, I bush hogged it down tight. So I scalped the ground with the grass, kind of trying to boost my biological material in the ground and get the weeds knocked down so that the grass had a time to smother them. It does look better. You can definitely tell that the weeds are less here than they are over here where I've never grazed, but at the other end where I bush hog, especially this first time of hay, the grass is much better. I'm going to show you where I'm going to cover crop and what I think is going to happen. Okay, so I have some areas as I go through this test that I grazed down tight, and then I'm going to cover crop. I have some areas that I mowed tight after I grazed tight, and to get the ground even tight, get the grass even tighter to the ground, and I'm going to cover crop that. I'm seeding tomorrow. I have some areas that I let them graze, and I didn't do any kind of mowing whatsoever to kill any of the weeds. So I'm going to see if the drill itself will knock down these weeds and they won't come back. So here's what I'm planning. Cover cropping into a perennial is very hard. Okay, so to cover crop into a perennial and then come back with a cash crop, it's difficult to kill all that perennial because the perennial wants to come back through. In this case, I want to do that. So I'm planting winter forage cover crops, and on my drill, I'm shutting off every other planter or line, okay? So instead of having that 7-inch, I'm gonna have 15-inch spacing, allowing some room for the grass to stay and the cover crop to grow through. But what I thought is if I have my grass too high, the grass will cover out this cover crop seed. So I wanted to get it tight and mow, and you'll see. So I've either got about a 2-inch cut on my mower here, or 4-inch, maybe 3 to 4 inch grazing tight cut. from the cows themselves. So if I can get the cover crop to come up through where they grazed and not have to mow, that's time and fuel and all that I've saved. So I won't ever mow again. I'll just continue to let them graze tight right before I cover crop. The thought process is that this cover crop will come up through this grass, will get a big thick floor of high protein feed for the winter, so I don't have to feed hay. And then I'll let my cows graze it throughout the snow, and then in the spring, since it's an annual cover crop, they will have killed all that off and my hay will come back up through it. So let's talk about seed. When I seeded this, I was told to go to my local farm store and buy a cattle hay mix, okay? As I learned, I didn't do that. So I didn't take like 5 people's advice and do that. I went and got an actual equine mix, so a horse mix. I did it because I started reading the labels. So when I looked at the cattle mix, it was like 90% Timothy and then a little bit of everything else. Timothy is not a nitrogen, it doesn't hold nitrogen very well, okay? So it doesn't sustain it, which means that I can have good Timothy hay, but I have to spread fertilizer every year or a massive amount of compost that I don't have the ability to make. So as I looked at the equine mix though, it had a wider variety, a bigger polyculture of grasses in it. More orchard grass, which is high protein for cows. Clover, which was only 10% I think in this mix, but even though I've got a lot in my field here, it holds nitrogen and it's a high protein source for my cattle. There was lots of other things, and it still had about 30% Timothy. So I went with the equine mix, and that's what I started with. So I have equine mix down here. Now my cover crop. I do want something to get a tall stand, okay? So I want something to get a tall stand in. So I am gonna put some rye, annual rye in, but it's very minimal. So I'm talking 30% annual rye. I have 4 main things that I'm putting in the main base of this, and we'll talk about those 4. So annual rye, crimson clover, hairy vetch, and a purple top turnip. So through each one, rye is going to get my lots of foliage, okay? Tall stand, lots of foliage. The crimson clover is going to be, it's going to help me sustain nitrogen. It's also going to be high in protein, and it's going to stay green. It's a clover that will stay green throughout the winter. Hairy vetch, which most people around here didn't, the lady where I bought this seed, they had never heard of it in the store except for the one young girl that worked at the store where I bought this seed. So they ordered this seed. I had it shipped in from Canada. It doesn't have any weeds in it. It is non-GMO, so it's hairy vetch, and it will hold around an 18% protein in the hairy vetch. So it doesn't grow very tall. It kind of creeps along the ground, 16 inches maybe, but it stays green throughout our winter. So I'm using hairy vetch. And then I'm using purple top turnips, okay? So I looked at radishes and turnips. Either one I think you're fine with, but I'm using turnips because they have a little more foliage, and they were a little more accessible to me here in Ohio where I'm at. So the turnips are gonna be my nitrogen storage tanks. So they're gonna pull in nitrogen, they're gonna pull in the sunlight now, they're gonna add sugars to the ground, and then the cows will take that foliage off of them, and that turnip will rot in the ground slowly throughout the year, releasing nitrogen back into my hay in my pastures here. So that's the main 4. Then what I did is I took all the market garden crops that didn't go well, or that I didn't really like the varieties, and I threw all that seed in there. So I've got Swiss chard, I've got kale, I've got cantaloupe, I've got squash, all the different lettuce seeds that I didn't like. So I tried probably 20 different varieties of lettuce this year, and I'm gonna keep about 5 of them. So the rest of them, I just threw all that in there. Now we're not talking a lot, we're talking ounces, okay? So I didn't buy pounds of this stuff when I was doing the market garden, but I threw all that random seed in there. I had some wax beans and whatever, I just threw it in there. Anything that I thought could add foliage to my fields and hold protein, any legumes that I had, anything that could hold those sugars in the ground. And even if the cows don't like it and they trample it, it's going to add that biological material to my hay, okay, to the ground, and it will break down and the hay will feed off of it, and I won't need to put fertilizer on this field. Since the crop, so I did put synthetic fertilizer on this field when I sowed it, as I was recommended to. I will not do that again. There is no more synthetic fertilizer going on this field. I don't need it, and I've got other methods to put that fertilizer in the ground to keep me away from it. Let's talk about one more thing I'm going to do for commercial farming. Behind me here is this little paddock that I've hard fenced in. The plan is eventually to build my cattle barn here, hay loft, all that cool farm stuff. But this is a pen, and I'm probably 50 by 150 in this little plot right here. And the kind of thought process for this was I wanted a holding area where I could load from. I wanted a holding area where I brought new cows in, they could have a couple days, you know, that's what I'm using it for right now. There's not a lot of manure built up here because the cows only stay here 1 or 2 days and then they're gone, and the chickens are close. They love to hang out in here after the cows leave. And the grass isn't perfect in here. I didn't even seed this, so this is whatever naturally came up. I think I might have threw some extra seeds out here, but I didn't go through and till or do anything special in this little paddock. What I'm going to do in this paddock though is I'm going to seed that same cover crop. One, so as it gets cold, my cattle can come in here and forage on that cover crop. This little shed that I have up here that I have wood in now, I will be removing that wood out. You can see a little bit of remnants of my new barn back in this area, back in here that we're putting up now. All that wood, my trailers and all that stuff will go in that barn. I will make a video on that barn. It's a interesting process and kind of a little adventure we're doing here. But this little shed right here, there's going to be about a 20 by 10 covering with closed-in walls that the cows can go into. If I get super cold here in Ohio, like they say it could get, I'll have a place for my cows to go in, and they will have that winter cover crop here to forage. So let's talk about that. What am I going to do here after that though to help commercial farmers, or to do a little test for commercial farming? So I've got grass, perennial. I'm putting cover crop down. I'm grazing it with cattle. Okay, so there'll be lots of manure in here. And then if I have to feed hay, I'll feed hay in here. After that, I am not going to till this. Okay, I am going to no-till drill sweet corn into here and let it come up right through this hairy vetch. I probably will do sweet corn, hairy vetch, sweet corn, hairy vetch, and let the hairy vetch be the cover crop in the sweet corn. So I've seen people do this with field corn, okay, with your normal cash crop field corn. I'm going to try it with sweet corn. If it works for sweet corn, it can definitely work for your technology field corn, cash crop, okay? So we'll see what happens here. We'll see what happens with a sweet corn. It's another test. I did a sweet corn test last year, but also I like this idea because I have hard fence and I can keep the raccoons easily out of my corn. So no pesticides, no herbicides, no fertilizer other than the cattle manure that will be left in here. I'm going to grow sweet corn with no fertilizer again, okay? This time it won't have drip irrigation. It won't have fabric. It'll just have cover crop. We'll see how that turns out. Hopefully some farmer around here can do a test and do that on field corn. Just imagine how much money you could make on field corn if you didn't have to pay for fertilizer, if you didn't have to pay for chemicals whatsoever, and you could no-till it all in and then harvest, and then have a grazing crop for your cattle to come back in on the winter on the old corn stalks in that hairy vetch that was the cover crop. So it's an option for you to increase your profits on that land that you're putting corn in and be a cash crop. The only warning I have for you is that the people that are doing this out west and in North Dakota and across the US, there's a guy in Columbus, Ohio doing it. The guys that are doing this are telling me there's something about the GMO seeds that it doesn't work well on. I don't know. I'm not anti-GMO. I haven't studied that stuff out enough. I don't know why. They just all recommended to me that I use a non-GMO corn and it will better be in the ground. I don't know why. Don't yell at me because of that. I don't know. I'm not, anti-corn farmer, but I'm going to try it for you, and hopefully if people want to grow some corn, that can be a way that you can use this in your normal cash crop method. So we'll see how that turns out. Thanks for watching. I will make an update to this video and show you how the cover crop comes up, show you when we're, as we go throughout the winter, I'll make videos to show you how we're grazing it, show you what it looks like, and I'll let you know how it turns out. Right now, it looks like I'll have about 9 calves this winter, and I have 19 round bales. That's it. So won't make it very long if this doesn't work. I do have an option. I do have a security blanket to go buy some. I have a place that has 100 that they said they would sell me, so I can buy it. So know that I'm not going into this, with no security there. But the cover crop, my goal is to be the 100-head cattle farmer with not a baler. So that's kind of the goal between these cover crops and seeing if this actually works. So big blends, look it up, look up these things. That's what we're doing. I'll show you how it comes in. Thanks for watching. Tell your mama and them, keep growing your own. And we just appreciate all your support. Thanks a lot.